Hello, this is Africa Talks, and I'm your host, Salim Solomon. Thank you for joining us. Today, I'll be joined by Emeritus Professor Dr. Abdullahi Ibrahim. Dr. Ibrahim received his bachelor's and master's degree from the University of Khartoum and completed his PhD at Indiana University. He taught at Khartoum University from 1987 to 1991. And from 1991 to 1993, he was a fellow of the Institute for Advanced Study and Research in African Humanities at the African Studies program of Northwestern University. He joined the University of Missouri faculty in 1994 and was promoted to associate professor in 2001. Professor Abdullahi Ibrahim retired from the University of Missouri Department of History after 15 years. Soon after that, he returned to his native Sudan to run for office, and we will discuss topics in relation to the experience during the 2010 presidential election. In addition to this, as the referendum is occurring shortly, we will also be talking about the climate in Sudan in relation to the referendum and what he thinks would be the outcome and the fallout. Well, it's an honor to have you here at the studios of Columbia Access Television. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Ibrahim.
My delight.
For 4 decades of your life, you've been reading, writing, and teaching in academia. And a year ago, you decided to go to Sudan and make changes in a big way. You have decided to go into politics by running for office. Why politics at a time when you're retiring?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not just an academician as such, not a career academician. I've been in and out academe, and one leg here, 1 foot here, 1 foot there. Politics and academe. I started as a student activist in the Students' Union of the University of Khartoum, and that is where I saw directly the relevance of politics to doing politics to changing the country. When we launched the 1964, October 1964 revolution, and we toppled a military dictatorship. That was a watershed in my life, because as a student I could have, graduated and just melt away. But that event was crucial, and it made the practice of politics for me like a second career or even a major career. So that is how I decided to get into the elections. Living here in the United States for probably more than 15 years, I came to realize that my country, although it is being seen, being presented as in negative light, very critical about it, people are very critical about it, but my own feeling is that my country is far ahead of so many other countries that were colonized before. People were fighting, were bickering, were dissenting in love of freedom and a readiness to sacrifice for freedom, to renegotiate, what I call renegotiation of the colony. Because in other colonies, this renegotiation has still to come, because you have a hegemonic power in that colony, an ethnic group, a class, or whatever that is keeping people suppressed. That is not the case in Sudan. And yet, and the disorder you see in Sudan, and the mayhem, the genocide, has a logic to it. That is, freedom-loving people would like to be in this new Sudan. This is independent Sudan. They would like to be citizens and not subjects. So I was optimistic that this is going to give a signal or a symbol that things in Sudan are not as depressing or hopeless as people would say.
So in relation to that, what was your experience like during the election? Was it, what was it like to vie for the presidency against Omar al-Bashir, who has been in power for 20 years?
Yeah.
And
That's
was it
important.
dangerous, or was it, how would you explain
It wasn't dangerous, but 20 years, this is important. 20 years changed things a lot, considerably. And the voters I saw were no longer voters, but they are clients.
Because they've established some sort of
yeah, he was,
relationship with
20 years, and the government in place, and they are expecting to be served, and they have been served meagerly before. So the government is having this new relationship of a disposer of services and to clients. And that wasn't the case. That I didn't expect that this is going to be a huge reality. That you cannot, just like an incumbent here, okay? In your own democracy, an incumbent is very difficult to beat because he or she is no longer a deputy or an MP, but a disposer of benefits, services, connections. So I was kind of depressed because of this. And he didn't beat me. He didn't beat me as just someone who is who ran as an independent. He beat major parties with religious backgrounds.
Yeah.
And loyalties.
70%,
Yeah. So that needs to be analyzed separately. I'm not on the idea that the whole thing was rigged. Something happened.
Was what I was going to ask you. Do you think it was free and fair?
Not in this. Not when you are having this kind of advantage. But I don't think that there is a kind of a literal rigging. For example, I was stopped from doing my first meeting with the people, and that is violence. I prepared my first rally, and the family was. The family was around me, friends and relatives close people. And then at just 4 hours before the rally, they came and they said, it's cancelled. That scared a lot of people. That is the time when I realized, some people started to, to distance themselves, not to be interested in not to engage themselves. And I consider this violence, and I consider this rigging. But
systematic.
It's systematic. And the fact that for so many people in Sudan, if Omar al-Bashir and his party and his security don't like something, don't risk, don't venture.
And you are also on the news network analyzing the results of the election.
Yeah, when I was.
What can you tell us about that?
When I withdrew from the, from the race, I had another hat on. That is a commentator, someone who is interested in politics, and so they co-opted me to sit for 4 or 5 long nights, just commenting on what seems to be going on. And that was a breakthrough, because, TVs just don't do that in Sudan, as you know, and in other countries. Yeah. Just to comment independently, in a straightforward way, to look at the different aspects of the electoral process. For example, we would be getting reports from people saying that, this election in this part of the country was rigged. And so we'll talk about this. We will talk to the police representative who would come night after night. They would come there We asked them about violence, about all kinds of things. Representatives of the political party, Bashir political party, would show and would ask them, severe questions about what seems to be going on. We will find some candidates who would show up and complain about certain things. People just like that because it was like a window of opportunity, a window that they never heard it before on TV, government TV.
Anything with the political nature was questioned. Basically.
Yeah, because they toe the line, as you know. They just toe the line and they say things that are, And I remember I went to another station, and that station was not as freely run as the first one. And I remember the time when the people there told me, tone it down. Okay, don't embarrass us.
What about the opposition? What about the other opposition?
I'm sorry to tell you that they just didn't show up.
Basically didn't show up at all.
They didn't show up. They started, wavering about it. They would announce that they would be running if the government would do this and this and this. Then next day they would say, no, they are not going to run because of this and this. And I think they were scared to be, they were not sure. And they are penniless for a long time.
Lack of
funding. And
confidence.
Yeah, and I'm very sorry for them. These are major parties in the country. These are parties with a solid base, like religious commitment, brotherhoods. They are two of them are basically brotherhoods, religious brotherhoods.
What type of solutions did they provide, or what were they running for when?
They lasted because for 20 years they were not developing a vision. They just hated this regime. And I always tell them, if you hate it, then hate it properly.
Have a solution for it.
Have a solution, have a vision, renew the intellectual furniture in the country, renew, all these parties were an inheritance of the nationalist movement, the socialist movement, the Muslim Brother movement or something like that. And they were rather bankrupt, intellectually bankrupt. And they just want this government to go. And they have been trying to do this for 20 years. And I just commend them for hoping.
Yeah.
This is just too much. On the other hand, I've been, I've been writing about this for a long time, the need for a vision. We are not in a hurry to remove this government. We really need to do our homework. We have a lot of things to work on intellectually. For example, they were asking the government after 20 years to give them some time on air, government air. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I remember one of the guys that's running against al-Bashir, the major guy coming from the SPLM, which governed, which is the government of the Southern Sudan.
Yeah.
This guy came on TV and he put something on his mouth here, like wanting to protest against the little time that provided. And I asked, and I wrote saying, why do you even need this time?
Yeah.
Why didn't you have your own show somewhere in the South? For 20 years, you failed to develop even a radio station, which is just peanuts.
They just didn't have vision.
They didn't have vision. They didn't have tools. They didn't like the government. They hate the government, but they are too reliant on it, even on this 15-minute thing. And sometimes they would tell them, okay, you recorded your stuff, we don't like it. So it was a miserable, and the reason why is that we have the perpetuation of this government is not because of violence. All these things are you count in, but basically the government has no opposition, and I'm always writing that this government is wretched. This government is wretched because God is tormenting it by not providing it with an opposition. Because the opposition...
You think it's vital to have an opposition?
Yeah, and you don't have it. And so this is... And a government without opposition is after 20 years, it's
hard to hold accountable.
Yeah.
I completely agree. So what do you think about al-Bashir's indictment for war crimes? Did anybody talk about that during the election?
Not when the time came to present things against against candidates, saying moral things or political things, or no one raised that issue.
Why do you think is the reason? Why didn't anybody bring this up? It's an important issue. International community have been rallying.
I was, for example, they would tell people off record about it. You know, this guy is indicted by this and this and that, and he should this. But they got to the court and reported and asked the government and asked the judiciary to remove him from the race. This is how reliant these people were on the Bashir. Large, you see his money and everything. You don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah, that's true. What about his side? Did they have any justification to debunk the ICC indictment?
Yeah, they say colonialism, imperialism.
So they have a rhetoric.
Yeah, and they got some purchase out of this political purchase out of identifying it as a colonial tool. And because of my people are kind of fed up with the double standards in international politics,
the foreign policy.
Yeah, and the West, the United States. So they are easily bought into the question of imperialism, because they see this court not really doing anything in so many other places. Why Sudan? So that triggered some nationalism. I called it, pseudo-nationalism.
Yeah. What do you think bittered the sentiment within Sudan in terms of the foreign policy or international community's lack of response to such cases? Do you think it was because of the history of Sudan, or?
Yeah, they think that is because we are Muslims, because we are opposed to the United States, because we are opposed to Israel. They start looking for whatever reasons, and they think that is why. And Bashir got a lot of influence out of that.
So that played an important role
during
the election.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go to the upcoming referendum now. There are a lot of reports of tension and security concerns in Sudan right now, as Sudan announces November 14th, I think, for the starting of the date of the voter registration for the referendum. What do you think will be the outcome, and what do you predict would be the fallout?
It is really very difficult to predict. If you are judging by the official position of the SPLA government, the South is going to go its own way. That is separation. because they, not only that, that seems that is the argument that they have been, or that is the position they have been advocating for a long time now, but because they are in control too. And even during the elections, you know, the reports were not positive about their dealings and handling of the situation. There were
Within
so
the
many,
Southern Sudan?
yeah, in their own election.
How would you analyze that?
They are strong. They are still a military controlled by a liberation army. The tradition, and they haven't had any kind of a civil society for a long time.
So they're literally starting from scratch.
They're starting from scratch in terms of the government, bureaucracy, civil society, because, you know, most of these people were just fighting, and the major towns were controlled by the government, no civil societies, just under security organization, and so they don't play by the rules. And even within this spell, I mean, you will find some independents who ceded, and because they were not chosen by the organization, and they ran as independent. And when they failed, they got into clashes with the government. So it is a place in which, you know, the gun. That is the role, and so we don't hear from the other constituencies. You know, you don't have a civil society, you don't have press, you don't have you have parties, but they are not that strong. So it is difficult to predict. But if you judge by the major player in that part of the country, you will see, you will come to the conclusion that we will be two separate countries come January the 9th. And I don't know. I don't like to live with this fact, but it is going to happen if things, you know, are going this way. But hopefully people are kind of piously praying for a change of heart, and that is not un-Sudanese. It happens. So
it happens.
Yeah.
Well, if you look back to the comprehensive peace agreement, the Navasha agreement in 2005, it was meant to end a second civil war, or develop a democratic governance countrywide and share oil reserves.
Yeah.
Do you think it has achieved that so far?
Oh yeah, yeah. We really
need
really to emphasize the fact that we had the best 5-6 years of our lives. It's not perfect, it wasn't perfect, but it was, you know, it was good, peaceful, no bloodshed. So just that is something that is a fact that some people sometimes ignore. And I think in our opposition groups, you know, they kind of didn't develop a taste for peace. They always want things to be in turmoil, tug of things, and that is politics in their. But I judge these years as very good years, not really or truly or effectively utilized, but
considerably peaceful.
Yeah.
Okay, for your future plans, I would like to talk about. You said that you want to give Sudanese people a better understanding of their history and the future. Well, how do you plan to go about it?
My understanding now is that after 20 years of total dictatorship and the bankruptcy of the total system in terms of intellectuality, academe, or something, things like that. I'm trying to be a little bit modest now, and I'm thinking about a kind of a cultural project in which we try to pick up the pieces, the intellectual pieces. For example, in terms of history, particularly in terms of history, I'm trying to develop a kind of a critical thinking apparatus. And I already started publishing an occasional paper under the name Katib al-Shuna. That is an old, that is the first writer in Sudan. That is the name of the first historian in Sudan. And I'm just trying to, and I'm thinking about, you know, having like a history day in the country to get young people hands-on doing, you know, documentaries and performances. That is my experience, you know, in the United States. I'm thinking of a book review thing, just to make people share the experience of writing. I'm really going back to the ABCs because I just didn't envision, didn't see how our culture has been fragmented and debased, and how people were made to be ignorant on their basics, and that is one. So that is my plan. It's simple. In addition to writing my columns and publishing my own research and books.
Thank you for joining us, and we wish you luck in your future projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that was all we had for you for today. Thank you for watching. This is Africa Talks.